Introduction: Carl Sagan, the cosmic messenger, the soft silence of the cosmos, where starlight takes millions of years to travel across the great Black Sea. There once lived a voice that dared to speak for Earth. Carl Sagan was not just a scientist, he was a poet of the universe, a wanderer of the infinite, and a beacon for those who looked up at the night sky and felt both small and deeply connected to something far greater than themselves. Born in 1934, in a time when space travel was the stuff of dreams and radio waves were only beginning to whisper. Across the stars, Sagan emerged as a bridge between science and the soul. He helped us understand the swirling galaxies above, but also the fragile world beneath our feet. To hear him speak was to be gently reminded of our place in the universe, not as rulers or conquerors, but as part of an intricate cosmic story still unfolding. Carl Sagan believed that science was not merely a method, it was a form of reverence, a sacred way of approaching the unknown. He taught us that skepticism need not be cold, that wonder can live alongside logic, and that curiosity is our birthright as thinking beings. His words carried the warmth of a human heartbeat and the gravity of interstellar space. Through his books, his lectures, and his timeless series, Cosmos, he invited generations to feel the mystery, not fear it. This audiobook is a gentle journey through his most powerful ideas. Each chapter is a constellation in the sky of his mind, a place where reason and imagination meet. We will explore the origins of life, the search for intelligence among the stars, and the message etched onto a golden record sent drifting into the dark. We will reflect on his warnings, his hopes, and the tender optimism that filled even his most somber reflections. Tonight, as you settle in and let your thoughts drift with the quiet hum of the stars, allow Carl Sagan's voice to echo softly through this narration, not just in quotes or facts, but in the spirit of inquiry and humility he championed. This is not just a story about a man. It's a reminder that in the vast universe, we are all part of something extraordinary, and that sometimes the best way to understand it is to simply listen. Chapter 1: A Pale Blue Dot. The Power of Perspective. It was February 14th, 1990, when a spacecraft more than 6 billion kilometers from Earth turned its gaze homeward. At Carl Sagan's suggestion, NASA commanded Voyager 1 its way to the edge of the solar system to take one last photograph of Earth. The result was haunting. A tiny, pale blue dot suspended in a beam of sunlight, barely visible against the vastness of space. In that image, Earth occupied less than a pixel. No borders, no divisions, no signs of nations or wars. Just a fragile speck adrift in the immense cosmic dark. To most, it was a novelty. To Sagan, it was a revelation. That dot was everything we knew, every person, every culture, every triumph and tragedy, all of human history compressed into a single blue shimmer, held by the gravity of a modest star. Sagan would later immortalize the image in his book, Pale Blue Dot, writing words that still resonate like a quiet echo across time. Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. With this simple photograph, Sagan offered a new kind of lens, not one of magnification, but of humility. He showed us that despite our conflicts and obsessions, we all inhabit the same dust mote in a sunbeam. He didn't seek to diminish our lives, but to elevate our understanding. In comparison to the cosmos, our divisions seem absurd, our quarrels fleeting, our responsibilities men's. He believed that perspective was not just a tool of astronomy, but a moral compass. From the edge of the solar system, Earth becomes a symbol of unity, not separation. There are no chosen people or privileged lands, no rightful rulers or sacred battlegrounds. Just one world. Our only home, the pale blue dot, became Sagan's quiet manifesto. It was not a lecture, it was a whisper of cosmic truth. And within that whisper lay a deep call for stewardship. If Earth is all we have, then we must care for it, not out of fear, but out of love. The same love we extend to family, to future generations, to the idea of life itself continuing in the great cosmic dance. Carl Sagan often walked the boundary between science and philosophy. In this image, he found both a data point and a prayer. He asked us to see beyond the surface of things, to replace arrogance with awe, and to understand that the vastness of the universe does not make us insignificant. Rather, it makes our brief existence all the more precious in the stillness of night. When the stars emerge and the world grows quiet, the pale blue dot returns to us not as a photo, but as a feeling. A reminder that while the universe is vast, it is not cold. That among the dust and light, we are capable of compassion, wonder, and wisdom, and that, perhaps, the greatest perspective of all is knowing how small we are and loving the world anyway. Chapter 2. The Cosmos is All That Is. The opening line of Cosmos, Carl Sagan's iconic television series, has become one of the most enduring phrases in the history of science communication. The cosmos is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. These words were not meant to dazzle with grandeur. They were an invitation to leave behind the familiar and walk into the vast corridors of time and space, where stars are born in clouds of gas, where light travels for eons to reach our eyes, and where our own atoms were forged in ancient stellar furnaces. To Sagan, Cosmos was more than a scientific term. It was poetry, a way of saying that we belong to something grand and intricate, something ancient and alive. In his voice, the word carried a pulse, a rhythm like the beating heart of the universe itself. It was not just galaxies and gravity, was connection, continuity, and the awe of simply existing in the world before Sagan. Science was often confined to the lab, surrounded by cold instruments and complex language. But with Cosmos, he changed that forever. He brought the stars into our living rooms. He turned scientific ideas into stories. And he reminded us that understanding the universe was not a luxury, it was a necessity. The cosmos is within us. He would often say, we are made of star stuff. To grasp this is to realize that the atoms in our bones were born in the core of dying stars, that the iron in our blood, the calcium in our teeth, and the carbon in our cells all trace their origin to celestial events that occurred long before Earth had oceans or air. In Sagan's vision, the universe was not distant, it was intimate. The story of the cosmos was the story of us. He often used a metaphor to describe our position in cosmic time. If the history of the universe were compressed into a single calendar year, with the Big Bang on January 1st, then human history would appear in the last few seconds of December 31st. We are a recent spark in an ancient fire, and yet, in that tiny sliver of time, we've built cities, written symphonies, landed probes on distant worlds, and pondered our place in it all. Sagan believed that to truly see the cosmos was to see ourselves not as separate, but as expressions of the universe becoming aware. We are the cosmos thinking about itself, he said. The universe, after billions of years, has given rise to consciousness, and with it, the ability to ask why. This question, so ancient, so human, guided much of his life's work. He didn't claim to have all the answers, but he insisted that the journey of asking them was sacred, that science was not just about facts, but about the joy of discovery, the courage to confront the unknown, and the humility to admit what we do not yet know. When Carl Sagan looked up at the night sky, he did not see emptiness. He saw possibility. He saw ancient light traveling across time to tell us stories. He saw the endless unfolding of nature's creativity written in starlight and nebulae. And most of all, he saw us not as accidental passengers in the universe, but as part of its very structure. In the quiet hours of the evening, when the world slows down and the stars begin to whisper, Sagan's words return like a gentle tide. The cosmos is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. Not just a fact, a comfort, a reminder that we belong not to borders, or tribes, or nations, but to the stars themselves. Chapter 3. The Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Among the many dreams Carl Sagan nurtured, one stood out for its boldness and beauty: the dream that we are not alone. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI, was not, to Sagan, a flight of fancy or a desperate hope. It was a natural question born from the very logic of the cosmos. Consider this: there are more stars in the universe than grains of sand on all the beaches of Earth. Around many of those stars, planets are forming, orbiting, evolving. If life arose here on a modest, rocky world, circling an average star, not elsewhere, Sagan understood that the question was not just whether life exists elsewhere, but whether intelligence, consciousness, even culture might have blossomed in the starlight of other worlds. What languages might they speak? What dreams might they dream? Could another species, somewhere across the galaxy, be staring into their night sky, wondering the same thing? His fascination with this idea wasn't rooted in fantasy, it was grounded in science, supported and helped popularize SETI, a project that listens for signals, faint and distant, that might be evidence of civilizations far older and wiser than ours. He believed that even a single signal, just one confirmed transmission, would forever change our understanding of life, meaning, and our place in the cosmos. But beyond the scientific implications, the search itself mattered. It was an act of hope, a gesture of openness, an invitation to the unknown. Saga saw SETI not only as a technical endeavor, but as a profound expression of who we are. To send messages into the darkness, to wait and listen patiently, is to believe that communication is possible, that across the light years, intelligence might recognize intelligence, that we might not be shouting into a void, but calling to friends. Perhaps no symbol of this hope is more powerful than the golden record, a phonograph disc launched aboard the Voyager spacecraft, bearing music, greetings, and images from Earth. Carl Sagan led the team that created it. It was, in essence, a bottle cast into the cosmic ocean, filled with the sounds of life, a baby's cry, the rhythm of a heartbeat, greetings in dozens of languages, and the music of Bach and Chuck Berry. Sagan knew the odds of someone finding it were vanishingly small, and yet he called it a message of optimism, a demonstration that even if we perish, we cared enough to say we were here. We reached out. We tried to connect. For Sagan, the search for extraterrestrial life was deeply tied to humility. It reminded us that we are not the center of the universe, that our way of thinking, our customs, even our fears and triumphs are but one version of existence among countless possibilities. To believe we are the only intelligent beings is not just arrogant, it may be tragically blind. And yet, he also warned that such a discovery could be sobering. If we find nothing, it may mean we are truly rare. That civilizations like ours often destroy themselves before mastering the art of survival. In that silence, there is a lesson. We must cherish what we have. We must protect the fragile miracle of our own consciousness, and not waste the gift of life on conflict and short-sightness. As the stars rise and the world sleeps, the great radio telescopes still turn toward the sky, still listening, still hoping, not with desperation, but with quiet wonder. Somewhere, Sagan's words still echo across the cosmos. The universe is a pretty big place. If it's just us, seems like an awful waste of space. Chapter 4. Voyager's Golden Record. A Message to the Stars. In the late summer of 1977, a spacecraft no larger than a small car began a journey that would defy imagination. Voyager 1 was launched not to return, not to land, but to wander. Its mission was to explore the outer planets of our solar system and then drift into interstellar space, silent, tireless, endless. But on board that humble traveler was something extraordinary. A golden record, not a metaphor, but a real record. A 12-inch copper disc, coated in gold, meant to last 1 billion years. Its grooves contained a message from Earth to the cosmos. Carl Sagan chaired the committee that created it, and what they chose to include was not just data. It was the essence of humanity. It begins with greetings in 55 languages. Kind voices saying hello, offering peace, offering presence. Then come the sounds of Earth, the crackle of a fire, the murmur of waves, the song of birds, the heartbeat of a human being. Next, music from Batch's mathematical grace to a Navajo night chant. From gamelan rhythms to the bluesy riffs of Chuck Berry. A collection vast and small, joyful and solemn. Like the human spirit itself, there were also 116 images etched in analog form. A woman nursing her baby, a child eating an ice cream cone, the Taj Mahal at sunrise, a DNA helix, a diagram of human anatomy, a supermarket, a school. Sagan and his team did not attempt to hide our imperfections. They simply tried to be honest, to say, this is who we are. The decision to include the golden record was not required by science. It added no functionality to the spacecraft. It was, in every way, an act of art, a gesture that said, even as we push outward into the unknown, we carry the story of home with us. And perhaps, someday, someone or something will find it and understand. But more than being a message to the stars, the golden record became a mirror for us. In curating its contents, Sagan and his team were forced to ask, what defines humanity? What do we cherish? What do we hope to preserve across time? He spoke of it as a time capsule, a snapshot of a fleeting moment in our planetary history, but also as a form of love. Love for music, for learning, for curiosity. Love for the fact that we could ask questions like, what should we say to a stranger 1 billion years from now? Perhaps most moving of all was the final audio on the record a message from Andruyan, Sagan's partner, who contributed something. No instrument could measure the electrical recording of her brainwaves and heartbeats as she thought about humanity, about love, and about Carl himself. It was the sound of a mind in awe, a soul in love, encoded in signals, sent across the stars. The Voyager's golden record might never be found. It might sail forever, untouched by hand or eye, and yet it carries with it the best of us, not because it hides our flaws, but because it dares to hope, because it believes that even in our smallness, there is beauty worth sharing. To Sagan, the record was not a message of arrogance. It was an offering, a tiny light in a great dark, a whisper into the cosmic sea that says, we existed, we felt, we reached out, and tonight, as we lie beneath the quiet stars, Voyager continues on, far beyond Pluto, far beyond the grasp of sunlight, drifting, listening, carrying our song into forever. Chapter 5. The Demon-Haunted World. The Value of Science. Imagine walking through an ancient forest at dusk. Shadows lengthen, unfamiliar sounds flutter between the trees, and every rustle feels charged with unseen presence. For most of human history, our world felt exactly like that forest, unpredictable, alive with spirits and portents, governed by forces we could not name. Carl Sagan called this mental landscape the demon-haunted world, not to mock our ancestors, but to acknowledge a timeless truth. Where knowledge is thin, imagination rushes in. From comets seen as harbingers of war, to illnesses blamed on curses, humanity has long filled the gaps in understanding with myths, monsters, and miracles. Yet Sagan believed those gaps were invitations, places where curiosity could plant its flag and light a candle in the dark 1995. Sagan published The Demon-Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Dark. The title alone is a manifesto. Science, for him, was a fragile flame, small, flickering, but powerful enough to push back vast darkness. It did not banish mystery. It illuminated it, turning fear into questions, questions into experiments, and experiments into understanding. He reminded us that the candle's glow has always advanced against resistance. Each discovery threatens an older story. Each fact dethrones a cherished legend. That struggle is not merely academic. It is woven into politics, religion, culture, and the private chambers of the heart. To choose the candle is to choose humility. We trade comforting certainties for provisional truths. Knowing every answer raises sharper questions. The fine art of baloney detection among the book's most beloved passages is the baloney detection kit. Sagan laid out simple tools, logical fallacies to watch for, questions to ask, ways to weigh evidence. It was not a weapon to shame others. It was a shield to protect ourselves. Why does this claim matter? Where is the data? Can it be tested? What would prove it false? He framed skepticism not as cynicism, but as compassion, a means to prevent deception, exploitation, and the quiet erosion of wonder. For Sagan, critical thinking and childlike awe were twinged, incomplete without the other. Believe too readily, and you drown in superstition. Doubt everything, and you suffocate wonder. Balance, he argued, is the true candle flame. Science and democracy, Sagan warned, that a society dependent on science and technology, yet ignorant of how they work, resembles a combustible mixture of power and ignorance. Democracy, he said, cannot thrive if citizens cannot tell evidence from rhetoric or data from dogma. To him, teaching science was not just career preparation, it was civic armor. He dreamed of classrooms where students learned how to think, not what to think, where error was not shameful, but essential, because every failed experiment refines the next question. The lure of the dragons the book's chapters pulse with cautionary tales. Faith healers promising cures while abandoning medicine. UFO cults mistaking wishful thinking for proof. Politicians bending facts to prejudice. Sagan did not scorn believers. Instead, he traced the emotional roots of belief, our longing for control, our fear of randomness, our hunger for meaning. He asked us to see the dragons clearly, not scaly beasts lurking outside, but illusions that arise inside us whenever reason sleeps. Science as a spiritual endeavor paradoxically. Sagan's rigorous skepticism made him one of the era's great romantics. His candle did not extinguish the sacred. It revealed a deeper, universal sanctuary, the unfolding cosmos itself. He wrote of the chemical arteries in the leaf of Saturn's rings casting braided shadows, of the 400 billion suns of the Milky Way. Detail a hymn. Science, he said, is informed worship. To measure the age of starlight is to touch eternity. To sequence DNA is to read the autobiography of life written across 4 billion years, standing up to the darkness. Sagan's last chapters carry a quiet urgency. He speaks of pseudoscience blooming on talk shows, of anti-intellectualism in public policy, of a culture drifting toward spectacle over substance. He reminds us that the demons adapt. They wear new costumes, miracle cures, conspiracy labyrinths, but their aim is unchanged, to profit from fear and to silence inquiry. Only a populace armed with curiosity and evidence can keep the candle lit. An invitation. Not a lecture reading the demon-haunted world feels. Less like attending a class, and more like walking beside a friend who stops to point at footprints in the mud, at stars caught in tree branches, at patterns hidden in plain sight. He does not drag us forward. He simply trusts that wonder, once awakened, will do the rest as you drift toward sleep. Imagine that candle small, golden, trembling against a boundless night. Its flame is every question asked in honest curiosity, every experiment done with care, every doubt voiced with respect. Carl Sagan passes it hand to hand across generations, across languages, across the pale blue dot. He asks only that we keep it alight, so that tomorrow's children will inherit not a demon-haunted world, but a universe ablaze with understanding. A quiet afterglow glows your eyes. Feel the gentle warmth of that candle. Let the shadows fade. Remember that science is not merely a body of knowledge, but a way of seeing, a vow to face the dark with open eyes and an open heart. And should the demons return, whisper Sagan's reassurance, for me, it is far better to grasp the universe as it really is than to persist in delusion, however satisfying and reassuring. The flame endures in every mind willing to question, to test, to wonder. May it light your dreams tonight, guide us all toward the dawn. Chapter 6. Cosmic Evolution, from Stardust to Consciousness. There is a story written across the universe, not in words, but in atoms, in gravity, in light. It is a story of transformation, of chaos becoming order, of simplicity giving rise to astonishing complexity. Carl Sagan dedicated much of his life to telling this story in a way that made us feel both humbled and uplifted. The story of cosmic evolution. It begins in silence. In the beginning, there were no stars, no planets, no minds to wonder or observe. Only energy, expanding, cooling, forming the first particles, hydrogen, helium, the raw materials of everything to come. As gravity gathered matter into stars, fusion lit their cores. In their blazing hearts, heavier elements were forged: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, iron. When these stars exhausted their fuel, they died in cataclysms, supernova that scattered their enriched remains across the galaxy. These ashes of stars became the seeds of new solar systems, of planets, of life. Sagan often reminded us of this profound truth. We are made of star stuff, not metaphorically, literally, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the oxygen you breathe were born in the hearts of ancient stars. You are not just in the universe, you are of it. But cosmic evolution doesn't end with elements. It builds, slowly, patiently, over eons on planets like Earth. Molecules began to dance in complex patterns. Chemistry gave rise to biology. From simple replicating strands came cells. From cells, complexity. From complexity, awareness. And eventually, a species capable of looking back up at the stars and asking, where did we come from? This journey from the Big Bang to human consciousness says not just a timeline of events. It is a profound arc of connection. Carl Sagan viewed this progression not as random chaos, but as a natural unfolding, a long, majestic, rising tide. He often spoke of evolution as the way the cosmos learns about itself. With each advance, each new neuron, each new insight, the universe becomes slightly more aware. You, listening now, are part of that process. A node in a vast network of thought that began with hydrogen and may one day span the stars. And yet, for all its grandeur, Sagan saw evolution as fragile. There is nothing inevitable about progress. Intelligence may be rare. Conscious life, even rarer. Civilization, most precarious of all. He believed that evolution had brought us to a moment of choice. We now have the power to shape the future or to end it. Our knowledge can cure diseases or build weapons. Our understanding can preserve our world or burn it. That's why he championed science education, critical thinking, and compassion. Because the story of evolution has no predetermined ending. It continues or halts based on the decisions we make now. But even in the face of risk, Sagan's voice was not one of fear. It was one of wonder. He found joy in the idea that the universe had taken 13.8 billion years to produce a mind that could appreciate a snowflake, or write a symphony, or wonder what lies beyond the edge of the observable. He invited us to see ourselves not as fallen, beings in need of redemption, but as rising beings in the midst of becoming, creatures shaped by the cosmos, awakening within it. As you breathe softly in this moment, let that thought settle like stardust. You are part of a chain unbroken from the first atoms to this very heartbeat. You are a whisper of ancient explosions. You are matter, become mind. You are the universe, briefly opening its eyes. And in that awareness, Carl Sagan saw not pride, but responsibility. If consciousness is so rare, then it must be cherished. If life is so delicate, then it must be protected. If the story of evolution has brought us this far, it is now our turn to carry the torch and to tell the next chapter. Chapter 7. Contact, the human desire to connect. Before there were telescopes, there were stories. Before we sent radio signals into space, we sent thoughts into the dark hopes, fears, questions that rose with the stars. Carl Sagan believed that this longing to connect, this urge to reach beyond ourselves, was one of the most defining traits of our species. It wasn't only about discovering alien civilizations. It was about understanding ourselves. In 1985, Sagan published a novel titled Contact, a fictional tale that explored what might happen if humanity received a message from an intelligent extraterrestrial source. It was more than science fiction. It was a meditation on belief, evidence, and what it truly means to make contact. The protagonist, Ellie Arroway, is a scientist devoted to the search for signals from the stars. When one finally arrives, it sends shockwaves through every layer of society, scientific, religious, political, personal. The response to the message becomes a mirror, reflecting humanity's highest hopes and deepest divisions. In the quiet between words, Sagan wove his deepest questions. If we found proof we are not alone, would it unite us or tear us apart? Would we listen with humility or speak with arrogance? What would we choose to say if we only had one chance to represent Earth? At its core, contact is not just about aliens. It's about connection between strangers, between ideas, between science and spirit. Sagan never saw those realms as enemies. He believed the search for truth was sacred. What it unfolded in a laboratory or in the depths of the human heart. The novel, like much of Sagan's work, explores the delicate balance between skepticism and faith. Ellie is a scientist who demands evidence, yet finds herself faced with experiences that cannot be measured. The universe, he seemed to suggest, is vast enough to hold both reason and wonder. When Contact was adapted into a film in 1997, just a year after Sagan's death, it became a tribute not only to the man, but to his dream that we might one day hear a voice in the cosmic dark and answer it with grace. But Sagan understood that the desire to connect didn't begin with SETI. It began with a human need to be seen, to be heard, to know we are not alone. In every ancient signal fire, every stone carving, every lullaby, we've been sending messages, forward messages to the future, and perhaps to the stars. Even now, Voyager 1 and 2 drift through interstellar space, bearing the golden record we spoke of before our cosmic greeting card. We do not know who might receive it or when, but we sent it anyway. Because connection is an act of hope, Carl Sagan believed that to reach out into the universe was to engage in the most noble of quests, not conquest, but contact, not to dominate, but to understand. He dreamed of the day we might listen to voices from another world, not to validate our place in the cosmos, but to expand our sense of home, and perhaps, in that moment of contact, we would finally see ourselves. Clearly not as nations or tribes, but as one species, born from stardust. Reaching across the dark in search of meaning, as the stars shine softly tonight and silence surrounds you. Imagine a distant world, quiet and waiting. Imagine a signal traveling across the light years. And imagine, just for a moment, that someone, somewhere, is listening back. Chapter 8. Time Travel and Sagan's Dialogue with Relativity. Time, as we experience it, is a river flowing steadily forward, moments passing, never to return. But the universe, as Carl Sagan explored, is far more mysterious. Through the lens of relativity and modern physics, time becomes elastic, a dimension intertwined with space itself, bending and stretching in the presence of mass and velocity. Sagan often marveled at how Einstein's theories reshaped our understanding of reality. He knew that what feels intuitive on Earth is only a small slice of the cosmic truth. Near a massive star or black hole, time slows down. Travel fast enough, close to the speed of light. And hours for you could mean years for those left behind. These insights inspired both wonder and speculation. Could time travel, so beloved in science fiction, ever be more than fantasy? For Sagan, the question was less about technological possibility and more about exploring the universe's poetic mysteries. In his book, Cosmos and Other Writings, he invited listeners to imagine what it would mean to move through time as freely as we move through space, to revisit moments in history or glimpse futures yet to unfold. But he also cautioned about paradoxes and the limits physics might impose. Time, he said, is a fabric complex woven from the threads of space, energy, and gravity. Its flow depends on the observer's journey. To truly understand the cosmos, we must let go of the simple idea that now is universal. Sagan's dialogue with relativity was also philosophical. If time is flexible, if past and future exist beyond our perception, what does that say about free will, destiny, and memory? How do we find meaning in a universe where time can twist and loop? He believed science's greatest gift was to reveal these questions not as threats, but as invitations to humility. We do not control time, but we can explore its mysteries. We do not command the cosmos, but we can listen to its language. As you rest and drift tonight, imagine traveling alongside a beam of light, racing through the fabric of space-time. Feel the slow dance of seconds stretching near a distant star. Let the elasticity of time expand your mind, opening doors to wonder. Carl Sagan showed us that the universe is stranger and more beautiful than we can imagine. And in that strangeness lies the secret to our endless curiosity, to desire not only to know the cosmos, but to be part of its unfolding story. Through every second, every galaxy, every breath. Chapter 9. The Shadows of Ignorance. Sagan's Fight Against Pseudoscience. For Carl Sagan. One of the greatest dangers facing humanity was not just ignorance itself, but the shadows it casts: pseudoscience, superstition, and false beliefs that thrive where light fails to reach. He called this realm the demon-haunted world, where fear and misinformation grow like weeds, choking reason and understanding. In his lifetime, and even today, he saw how easily people fall prey to comforting illusions, miracle cures, conspiracy theories, astrology, and claims that defy evidence but promise certainty. Sagan's fight was not against belief itself. He respected the human need for meaning, but against the exploitation of that need, against those who used fear and ignorance as tools to deceive, to divide, and to profit. He tirelessly advocated for critical thinking, skepticism, and the scientific method as shields against the shadows. To him, education was the light that could push back darkness. His famous baloney detection kit was a guide to spotting flawed arguments, emotional manipulation, and false logic. Sagan understood that the allure of pseudoscience lies in its simplicity and certainty. The world is complex and uncertain. Science demands patience and humility. For some, it is easier to cling to easy answers than to face ambiguity. Yet he believed humanity's survival depended on embracing complexity, questioning, on demanding evidence. He warned that ignoring science could have dire consequences, from environmental destruction to nuclear war. His battle was not just intellectual, but deeply moral. To think clearly, to seek truth, to question assumptions, these were acts of courage and care for the future. As you listen tonight, let Sagan's words remind you that skepticism is not cynicism, but an act of love for knowledge, for ourselves, and for the fragile world we call home. Chapter 10. The Nuclear Winter Warnings. Carl Sagan was not only a dreamer of stars and cosmic mysteries, but also a vigilant guardian of our fragile planet. Amidst the wonder of the universe, he never lost sight of the very real dangers humanity faced, most notably the terrifying specter of nuclear war and its catastrophic consequences. In the latter half of the 20th century, the world found itself perched precariously on the edge of mutual destruction. The Cold War's nuclear arms race created arsenals capable of annihilating life on Earth many times over. The threat was not abstract. It was visceral, immediate, and haunting. Sagan, with his unique ability to bridge science and public consciousness, emerged as a critical voice warning about the aftermath of nuclear conflict. Not just the initial blasts, but the lingering shadow that could fall over the planet. Nuclear winter, the birth of a terrifying theory. The idea of nuclear winter arose in the early 1980s when scientists, including Sagan and his colleagues, began to understand that a full-scale nuclear war would ignite countless fires, sending vast amounts of soot and smoke high into the stratosphere. This smoke could block sunlight, plunging the Earth into darkness and causing dramatic drops in temperature worldwide. This nuclear winter scenario threatened global agriculture, ecosystems, and human survival. Even nations untouched directly by the blasts could face famine, climate collapse, and societal breakdown. It was a chilling reminder that nuclear war would not only kill millions in moments, but potentially collapse civilization itself. Science meets advocates. Sagan was instrumental in communicating this complex, terrifying possibility to both policymakers and the public. His skill lay not only in explaining scientific models, but in conveying the moral urgency behind them through interviews, articles, and public appearances. Sagan painted a picture of a world where the violence of humanity's weapons could inadvertently trigger a global catastrophe beyond imagination. He called for arms control, disarmament, and international cooperation, not merely as political ideals, but as necessary steps to preserve life on Earth. His efforts helped shape discourse around nuclear weapons and contributed to treaties aimed at reducing arsenals and preventing proliferation. The shadow over humanity. What made Sagan's warnings especially poignant was his understanding of humanity's capacity for self-destruction, yet also for hope. Nuclear winter symbolized the ultimate consequence of our failure to live wisely. It was a scientific truth wrapped in a moral imperative to recognize the fragility of our home, the pale blue dot. Yet, Sagan's message was never one of despair. Instead, it was a call to awaken, to embrace responsibility, to choose cooperation over conflict, to invest in the future rather than destruction. He often reflected on the paradox that while science had given us the means to end life, it also gave us the knowledge to prevent that fate. The power to destroy was matched by the power to understand, to communicate, and to change course, legacy, and continued relevance decades later. The specter of nuclear winter remains a vital caution. Though the Cold War ended, nuclear weapons persist, and new geopolitical tensions arise. Climate change and environmental degradation add further layers to the challenges Sagan foresaw. His work on nuclear winter stands as a testament to the importance of science in guiding ethical decisions and global policy. It reminds us that understanding the natural world is inseparable from caring for our place within it. A. Nighttime reflection as you lie quietly, surrounded by the calm of night. Consider the delicate balance that holds us here between light and shadow, knowledge and ignorance, hope and fear. Carl Sagan's warnings about nuclear winter echo softly, urging vigilance without panic, awareness without paralysis. They invite us to cherish our world with the same awe we feel when gazing at distant galaxies, because the survival of the pale blue dot depends not just on chance, but on the choices we make, choices illuminated by science, compassion, and the quiet courage to face the future. Chapter 11. The Importance of Science Education. Carl Sagan believed that the most powerful tool humanity possessed wasn't a telescope or a spacecraft, was education. Specifically, science education. Not merely a curriculum of facts or formulas, but a way of seeing the world. A way of asking questions, seeking truth, and cultivating wonder. For Sagan, education wasn't about memorizing the names of the planets or the parts of a cell. It was about lighting a fire in the mind. A fire that begins when a child first asks why, and that grows with every moment of discovery. It was about nurturing curiosity, not extinguishing it with rigidity. In his books, public lectures, and television appearances, Sagan often emphasized the urgent need for a scientifically literate public. He warned that our world, deeply dependent on science and technology, was increasingly populated by people who did not understand how either of those things worked. That disconnect, he believed, was dangerous. A foundation of democracy. Sagan was particularly concerned about the relationship between science, education, and democracy. In his eyes, a functioning democracy requires more than just voting. It requires informed citizens who can think critically, weigh evidence, and resist manipulation. He posed a powerful question: how can we make decisions about energy, climate, medicine, or technology if we don't understand the science behind them? In a world where misinformation can spread like wildfire, Sagan saw science education as armor against deception. It trains the mind to spot fallacies, demand evidence, and remain skeptical of claims without proof. It encourages us not to take things on authority alone, but to verify, to experiment, to think for ourselves. He feared a future in which science was viewed as distant or elitist, rather than what it truly is: a birthright of every human being, a way of knowing that belongs not just in laboratories, but in kitchens, playgrounds, and conversations. The art of teaching. Carl Sagan was not just a scientist, he was a teacher in the deepest sense. He had an extraordinary ability to translate complex ideas into language that anyone could understand. He didn't talk down. He lifted others up. He believed that science should be beautiful, that the story of the universe, from quarks to quasars, should be told with poetry, passion, and joy. Facts alone were not enough. They needed context. They needed to be part of a grand narrative in which the listener saw themselves not as a spectator, but as a participant in the unfolding cosmos. He often spoke of teachers who had changed his life, those who didn't just recite facts, but who inspired him to think bigger, to wonder, to ask the next question, and in turn, he dedicated his life to becoming that kind of teacher for others, nurturing. Wonder in the young Sagan loved to talk about children, not as blank slates, but as natural scientists. Every toddler, he said, is an experimentalist testing the world with fingers, eyes, and questions. The tragedy, in his view, was that the education system often dulled that innate curiosity. Rather than nurturing wonder, it too often crushed it with repetition, anxiety, or irrelevance. He dreamed of classrooms where imagination and evidence worked side by side, where students weren't punished for being wrong, but encouraged to explore why. Failure wasn't shameful, it was data, because science, he believed, is the opposite of dogma. It evolves, it corrects itself, and it invites participation from everyone, regardless of background. The cost of ignorance, again, did not mince words when warning about what happens when science is ignored. From the rejection of vaccines to the denial of climate change, from environmental degradation to pseudoscientific scams, he saw a pattern. The erosion of critical thinking leaves societies vulnerable. He was especially concerned with the spectacle, culture, the prioritization of entertainment over substance, image over insight. He warned that when citizens become passive consumers rather than active thinkers, democracy itself becomes fragile. In his own words, "We live in a society exquisitely dependent on science and technology, in which hardly anyone knows anything about science and technology." That dissonance, he believed, was not sustainable. The solution: education's starting early and continuing always. Science as a human story. To Sagan, science wasn't just for scientists. It was part of the human story, a continuation of the same impulse that made our ancestors look up at the stars and wonder. He told that story in ways that made it feel intimate, personal, emotional. The idea that the atoms in our bodies were forged in stars, that the laws of physics shape everything from galaxies to teardrops, that the search for truth is an act of love for life, for our species, for the future. His ability to tell that story calmly, clearly, and with unshakable hope was his greatest gift as an educator, a whisper for the future tonight. As your thoughts drift like satellites in a quiet sky, imagine a classroom with no walls. The teacher is the night sky itself, and every star is a question waiting to be asked. Sagan would have smiled at that image. He believed that education didn't end at graduation, that to be alive was to be a student, that every moment of curiosity was a step closer to understanding not just the world, but ourselves as you rest now. Remember this truth he gave us. Somewhere, something incredible is waiting to be known. And perhaps the greatest classroom is right here, within your own imagination. Chapter 12. Planetary Protection and the Fragile Earth. Carl Sagan spent much of his life gazing outward toward Mars, toward the stars, toward the edges of the known universe. But even as his mind wandered across galaxies, his heart never lost sight of Earth. To Sagan, the further we looked into space, the more precious our own planet became. He often reminded us that the Earth, this pale blue dot, is the only home we've ever known, and perhaps it's the only one we ever will. His deep reverence for Earth was not rooted in nostalgia or nationalism, but in a planetary perspective, a vision that understood the delicate web of life, the unique chemistry of our biosphere, and the razor-thin shell of atmosphere that makes all living things possible. It was a kind of cosmic environmentalism, forged not in forests, but in the vastness of space, the birth of planetary protection as humanity prepared to explore other planets, beginning with the Moon and Mars. A new ethical question emerged. How do we protect those worlds and our own from unintended contamination? Sagan was one of the earliest voices to advocate for planetary protection, a field of science and policy designed to ensure that in our quest to explore the universe, we do not harm the very places we seek to understand. He understood that life, even microbial life, if it exists beyond Earth, must be preserved and studied, carefully not erased by careless contamination. If we were to send probes to Europa or Enceladus, for example, Lycee moons that might harbor subsurface oceans, how could we ensure that the life we discover is native to that world and not a stowaway bacterium from Earth? And, equally important, what if we brought something back? Sagan helped shape the protocols that govern space exploration. Today, sterilization standards, quarantine procedures, and international agreements are all part of a framework designed to preserve the integrity of life on Earth and beyond. These policies may seem technical, but they are deeply philosophical. They stem from a single, profound question: are we responsible stewards of life in the universe? Earth as the archetype advocating for planetary protection, Sagan often returned to the image of Earth from space. When we see our world from a distance, floating in the inky blackness, it changes us. Borders vanish. politics dissolve. What remains is beauty and vulnerability. In pale blue dot, he wrote, "Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us." He wasn't speaking to astronauts or policymakers alone. He was speaking to everyone. To see the Earth from space, even in a photograph, is to feel both awe and responsibility. It is to recognize that this tiny sphere holds every book, every love, every memory, every child, and that it must be protected not from aliens, but from ourselves. Sagan warned that if we continued to treat the Earth as expendable, as something separate from us, we risked losing everything. Not through some grand apocalypse, but through slow erosion, deforestation, pollution, extinction, ignorance. The paradox of progress. Sagan embraced scientific advancement, but he was not blind to its risks. He spoke candidly about the paradox of progress, that the same technology capable of curing disease or revealing distant galaxies could also poison rivers, destabilize climates, or destroy entire ecosystems. He believed that scientific knowledge without ethical wisdom was dangerous, that we must pair exploration with restraint, curiosity with caution. Planetary protection, then, was not only about safeguarding Mars or Europa. It was about applying those same principles here on Earth. What would it mean to treat Earth as we treat Mars? What if we approached our own ecosystems with the same reverence, the same caution, the same respect for complexity and fragility? Climate change and global awareness. Though Sagan passed away before the full impact of climate change became widely accepted, he foresaw many of its dangers. He understood the science behind the greenhouse effect. In fact, he studied it on Venus, where runaway carbon dioxide turned the planet into a furnace. He warned that Earth could face a similar fate if we ignored the balance of our atmosphere. And he urged governments, educators, and citizens alike to take responsibility before it was too late. To him, the environment wasn't an issue. It was the issue, because all other economics, politics, culture depend on a planet that can sustain life. The role of imagination. Sagan believed that protecting the Earth required more than data. It required imagination. We had to be able to see beyond today, to envision a future worth fighting for, to recognize that our actions ripple forward, not just for years or decades, but for generations. In one of his final essays, he wrote about the importance of building a civilization that could live with its technologies and not be overcome by them. That goal, he believed, depended on education, empathy, and a global sense of identity. A dream of guardianship, as you rest beneath the stars. Imagine the Earth not as a resource, not as property, but as something entrusted to us, a living library of life, a garden grown over billions of years. a cradle holding consciousness in its gentle gravity. Carl Sagan dreamed of a species that could grow into its wisdom, that could travel to the stars. Yes, but not because it had destroyed its home and needed another. Because it had cherished its home and was ready to bring that care to other worlds. He imagined astronauts planting flags, not in conquest, but in wonder. Scientists studying alien microbes, not as threats, but as sacred. Humanity acting not as invaders, but as guests in the vast house of the universe. One planet, one chance, as the night deepens and your breath slows. Remember, there is no planet B. There is only this fragile world, spinning gently in space, warmed by a distant sun. Watched over by no one but us. Planetary protection begins here, in the choices we make, in the humility we cultivate, in the love we carry for this world, and all the worlds we have yet to meet. Carl Sagan's legacy is not just a call to look up pits, a reminder to look around and to care deeply, actively, now. Chapter 13. The Pale Blue Dot. A Philosophy for the Future. There are few moments in human history that capture our essence as a species more poignantly than a single photograph taken in 1990 by the Voyager 1 spacecraft at Sagan's suggestion. NASA commanded the probe then, on the edge of the solar system, to turn its camera back toward Earth. The result was a tiny point of light, suspended in a beam of scattered sunlight. The Earth appeared less than a pixel wide. That photograph became known as the pale blue dot. To most people, it was an image of almost nothing. But to Carl Sagan, it was everything. It wasn't just a photograph. It was a revelation, a shift in perspective, a mirror held up to humanity, reminding us of our place in the vast theater of the cosmos, a fragile world in the vastness of space from a distance of 6 billion kilometers. The Earth looked like a mote of dust caught in a sunbeam. No countries were visible, no wars, no cities, no people. Just a single speck floating in the black dot. Sagan wrote, "That's here. That's home. That's us." He described how every human being who ever lived, every hunter and forager, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, lived their entire lives on that dot. It was not meant to make us feel insignificant, but to awaken humility. If we could see ourselves from that vantage point, he reasoned, perhaps we would let go of our arrogance, our divisions, our delusions of grandeur. Perhaps from the edge of the solar system, we might finally understand that we are one species, sharing one world, a new philosophy rooted in perspective. The pale blue dot was not only a scientific image, it was a philosophical turning point. Sagan believed that our survival depended on perspective. Without it, we would remain trapped in cycles of conflict, unable to see beyond our tribe, our borders, our moment in time. But with it, we could grow. A civilization that sees itself honestly from spaces. A civilization that might evolve ethically as well as technologically. It might come to value cooperation over competition, sustainability over consumption, peace over pride. Sagan proposed a philosophy of planetary unity, one not based on ideology, religion, or political systems, but on the plain fact of our shared existence. He offered no utopia, no perfect world, only the possibility of progressive. We were willing to earn it. The voice of the cosmos Sagan, S-words in pale blue dot. A vision of the human future in space, echoed like a soft but urgent sermon. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance. The delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, sorry challenged by this point of pale light. He saw clearly that the universe was not created for us, that we were not at the center of it. And yet, he found no despair in that truth. He found meaning in the fact that we are here briefly, precariously, astonishingly, that against unimaginable odds, life evolved, and that one form of life, clever primate species, had developed telescopes, mathematics, poetry, and spacecraft. That, perhaps, was meaning enough. Responsibility through awareness. With that expanded view came responsibility. Sagan understood that space exploration was not just about rockets and distant planets. It was about the Earth, about learning to see it, care for it, and protect it. He wrote, "There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world." The pale blue dot image exposed the absurdity of violence, the tragedy of poverty, the madness of environmental neglect. All our great divisions, all our conflicts play out on a stage, too small for such arrogance. Sagan hoped that this realization might awaken a kind of planetary consciousness, not idealism, but realism with heart, a recognition that our differences shrink before the vastness of spacehand, that cooperation is not noble, but necessary, an ethical compass for a cosmic journey. The pale blue dot became, in Sagan's words, a moral lesson. As we venture deeper into space, he argued, we must carry with us not just technology, but wisdom, empathy, memory. He feared that without these things, our reach into the cosmos could become reckless or meaningless. But with them, it could become a journey of transformation, a pilgrimage, not just outward, but inward, toward maturity. Sagan's dream was not of colonizing other planets for conquest or escape, but of becoming worthy explorers, of reaching the stars, not because we destroyed Earth, but because we honored it. Hope in the darkness even in his final years. As illness slowed his voice, Sagan continued to speak of the pale blue dot with hope. He saw in it a reason to teach, to write, to warn. He believed that if enough people could truly see that image, not just with their eyes, but with their minds, it might change how we live. He reminded us that Earth is the only home we've ever known, that to abandon it to poison, it is to lose the very ground of our being. But he also saw a future in which children grow up knowing their place in the cosmos, a future where we explore not out of greed, but of reverence, not to conquer, but to connect. A final whisper night. As you close your eyes, picture that dot, faint, isolated, floating in the vastness of space, and yet containing everything your memories, your dreams, your loved ones. Let that image settle in your heart, not as a source of fear, but of wonder. You are part of a species that can see its own reflection in a beam of sunlight across 6 billion kilometers. That insight is a gift. It is also a task. Carl Sagan passed the torch to us, not just to explore the stars, but to protect the dot, to remember our shared origin, to act with grace in a universe that owes us nothing, but that has given us everything. The pale blue dot is more than a picture. It is a promise, a reminder, a quiet voice in the dark saying, "You are small, but you matter. Choose wisely." Chapter 14. SETI and the Quest for Cosmic Companionship. From the earliest flickers of human consciousness, we've looked to the stars and wondered, are we alone? That question, ancient and primal, has echoed through the centuries from oral myths and sacred texts to science fiction and radio telescopes. For Carl Sagan, it wasn't merely a curiosity. It was a calling. He believed that the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, ETI, is not only a scientific endeavor, but a deeply human one. It was an expression of our longing to connect, to understand our place in the cosmos, to know whether the silence of the night sky is emptiness or invitation. Sagan didn't just support SETI. He helped shape its foundation. His voice became one of its clearest champions, blending rigorous science with poetic wonder. Listening for voices in the dark CTI is simple in concept, but profound in implication. Scan the sky for signals that could originate from intelligent civilizations, not UFOs or flashing lights, but deliberate, structured patterns, radio waves, laser pulses, whispers in the electromagnetic C dot. To some, SETI might seem fanciful or even foolish, but to Sagan, it was an experiment grounded in both humility and hope. He often asked, if intelligent life evolved on Earth, why not elsewhere? Given the vastness of the universe, hundreds of billions each with hundreds of billions, of stars, how could we presume to be the only flicker of awareness? Sagan wrote, "The universe is a pretty big place. If it's just us, seems like an awful waste of space." That line, later made famous in the film adaptation of Contact, captured the tension at the heart of SETI. The silence is deafening, and yet the possibility persists. The science of Search SET relies on our understanding of physics and mathematics, universal languages that any technological civilization might use. It assumes that intelligent life, wherever it arises, would seek to communicate in ways that can be detected across interstellar distances. We've built massive radio telescopes like the now quiet Arecibo Observatory that scan slices of the sky, listening for unnatural patterns, prime number sequences, or narrowband transmissions unlikely to occur naturally. Carl Sagan didn't just imagine receiving a message, he also considered what we might say in return. He helped design the Arecibo message in 1974. A simple binary transmission sent into space, containing information about human DNA, our solar system, and the structure of a human figure. More famously, he helped craft the golden record affixed to the Voyager spacecraft, containing greetings in 55 languages, music from Batch to Blind Willie Johnson, sounds of Earth, and images of life on our planet. It was humanity's first interstellar mixtape, part science, part art, part cosmic dream. Beyond the search bud for Sagan, SETI was never just about contact. It was about perspective. Whether or not we ever receive a reply, the act of listening reshapes how we see ourselves. It humbles us, reminds us that we are one civilization among countless worlds, that our conflicts and boundaries, our fears and triumphs unfold on a tiny stage in a vast theater. It also unites us. SET is not a national project. It is a human one. The search is conducted across borders, languages, and ideologies. In listening to the stars, we become earthlings. Sagan often dreamed aloud. What would happen if we actually made contact? How would humanity react? Would it unite us in awe or fracture us in fear? He didn't pretend to have answers, but he believed the mere effort of seeking others was transformative. It encourages empathy, patience, a longer view, the great silence, and yet we have not heard anything. This silence has a name. The Fermi paradox, named after physicist Enrico Fermi's question, where is everybody? If the universe is old and vast, and if life is common, why haven't we detected any other civilizations? Sagan acknowledged the paradox, but was undeterred. He explored possible explanations. Perhaps intelligent life is rare or self-destructive. Perhaps civilizations are quiet by choice or use communication technologies we haven't invented yet. Perhaps they live in environments we can't imagine, or perhaps they're just too far away. He urged us not to interpret silence as absence, and never as permission to give up. He reminded us that we've only just begun to listen. The universe is ancient. We are young. Our technology is barely a century old. The radio waves we send outward haven't even reached most of the nearby stars, SETI as a mere ultimately. The value of SETI is not only in what we might find, but in how the search changes us, Carl. Sagan saw SETI as a mirror, a way to reflect on what intelligence means, what civilization means, what it means to be human in a cosmic context. If we are alone, it places an even greater responsibility on us to preserve life, to explore wisely, to avoid self-destruction. If we are not alone, then we become part of something vast in interstellar community that may have lessons to teach and much to learn. Either way, the search dignifies us, a soft message in the night and night as you rest under your own silent sky. Imagine a signal moving through the darkness. Maybe it left its world 1,000 years ago. Maybe it's still traveling. Maybe we'll catch it tomorrow, or in a century. Imagine civilizations separated by oceans of space and time, reaching out not to conquer, but to connect. Not with weapons, but with greetings. Not with fear, but with music. That SETI, in Sagan's eyes, was not a project of desperation, but of hope. It was the ultimate act of optimism, to believe that someone, somewhere, might be listening, and that what we say matters. And so we send our messages. We build our telescopes. We keep watch, because even in the silence, the search itself becomes sacred. Chapter 15. Science and Spirituality. Sagan's Bridge Between Worlds. Too many. Science and spirituality seem to walk on opposite paths. One demands evidence, the other embraces faith. One peers through telescopes and microscopes, the other through inner contemplation and ritual. For centuries, they've often clashed, one accused of arrogance, the other of superstition. But Carl Sagan saw things differently. He believed the two weren't enemies. At their best, they were companions each, asking the deepest questions of existence. Where did we come from? Why are we here? What lies beyond? Sagan was not a religious man in the traditional sense. He did not believe in a personal God, or miracles, or sacred scriptures, but he was deeply spiritual in the most essential meaning of the word. He felt awe, reverence, and humility before the cosmos. He understood the hunger for transcendence. He felt it too, the wonder that unites using cosmos. Sagan wrote, "Science is not only compatible with spirituality, it is a profound source of spirituality." For him, wonder was not the enemy of reason. It was its reward. The more he learned about the universe, the stars, the atoms, the eons of deep time, the more profoundly he felt connected to something greater than himself. He stood in awe of the laws of physics, the elegance of DNA, the staggering scale of the cosmos. These were not cold facts, but luminous truths, and in them he found a kind of sacredness not handed down by any deity, but revealed through patient inquiry and observation. He often described this feeling as numinous, a word that blends mystery, beauty, and the sense of standing at the edge of the unknown. No sacred text, but sacred curiosity. Sagan's gospel was the scientific method, the idea that truth emerges not from authority, but from testing, from doubt, from repetition, from honest conversation with nature. Yet, he understood why religion endures. It gives people a framework for meaning, for a community, for facing the vastness of life and death. He never mocked this need. He simply believed that science could provide an alternative source of meaning, one that was not rigid or dogmatic, but dynamic and ever-evolving, where religion often asks for obedience, science asks for courage. Courage to admit ignorance. Courage to revise our understanding. Courage to say, I don't know, and then try to find out. In this sense, Sagan offered not a religion, but a practice, the practice of wonder, tempered by humility, the practice of asking beautiful questions, moments of cosmic reverence. Sagan's spirituality was quiet, reflective. It wasn't about rituals, but about perception. He once described standing under a night sky and feeling kind of exalted state, a lifting of the self into something timeless. He felt the atoms in his body forged in ancient stars, and he smiled at the thought that, in a very real way, we are all stardust contemplating the stars. He often said that science doesn't rob the world of its poetry, adds to it. A rainbow is no less beautiful because we understand refraction. A flower is no less miraculous because we know its biology. On the contrary, knowing how things work can deepen our awe. And so, in place of sacred hymns, Sagan gave us the music of the spheres. In place of parables, he gave us the story of evolution, of galaxies forming, of time unfolding from a singularity. His pulpit was the universe itself. The human need for meaning. Sagan knew that facts alone do not satisfy the human spirit. We long for connection, for purpose, for orientation in the vast sea of existence, and he did not believe science should ignore this longing, should engage with it. He asked, what if our meaning comes not from a creator above, but from the astonishing improbability of our own existence? What if our very awareness is what gives the universe a chance to understand itself? This was the spirituality Sagan offered, not one of commandments, but of perspective, not of heavens and hells, but of galaxies and cells, each bound by the same natural laws. It was a spirituality without superstition, a reverence without submission. On death and eternity even, when contemplating mortality, Sagan remained rooted in this scientific form of spirituality. He did not believe in an afterlife, yet he found comfort in knowing that nothing is truly lost, only transformed when we die. Our atoms return to the earth, to the cycle of life. We do not vanish. We change form. We become soil, tree, air, star. His wife, Andrusian, once wrote that even in his final days, facing terminal illness, Sagan held fast to the beauty of reality as it is. He did not seek refuge in fantasies, and yet he felt wonder until the end. Bridging the divide in many ways, Carl Sagan built a bridge between science and the soul. He didn't ask us to abandon meaning. He asked us to find deeper, truer meanings through evidence, exploration, and shared understanding. He saw humanity's future not in temples or cathedrals, but in space stations, observatories, and classrooms. Not in ancient doctrines, but in collective curiosity. And yet, he never closed the door on mystery. He believed there were questions we had not yet learned to ask, and perhaps the answers to those questions, when they arrive, will be more beautiful than we can currently imagine. A night of quiet wonder as you drift into sleep tonight. Let yourself feel what Sagan felt when he looked up at the stars. Not fear, not confusion, but awe. Feel the quiet hum of existence all around you, the breath in your chest, the wind outside your window, the light from a star that left its home before you were born. These are not merely facts. They are experiences of connection, of being alive for a brief moment in a universe that makes no promises, but offers infinite beauty to those who listen. Carl Sagan invited us to listen, not just with instruments and equations, but with open hearts, to see the sacred not in miracles, but in reality itself. Because science, in its deepest expression, is not a cold pursuit. It is a love letter to the cosmos, to life, to understanding, and it begins every time we look up and whisper, "What is this, and how do I fit within it?" Chapter 16. Interstellar Messages, Humanity's Voice Across Time. In the cold silence beyond our solar system, two spacecraft are still drifting farther from Earth with every passing second. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, launched in 1977, carry within them something extraordinary, a message, a golden time capsule affixed to their bodies, designed not for us, but for them, whoever they might be. These are the Voyager Golden Records, perhaps the most ambitious mixtapes in human history. Each one holds a carefully chosen collection of sounds, images, languages, and music. Behind that bold decision to speak to the unknown stood the gentle voice of Carl Sagan. He helped lead the team that curated the records, a task not only scientific but profoundly philosophical. If you had one chance to speak for all of humanity, what would you say? Whispers to the unknown. Sagan believed that Voyager's journey into interstellar space presented more than an engineering challenge. It offered a rare opportunity to represent the entire Earth to a stranger. But what kind of stranger, if intelligent? Life exists elsewhere. If it can intercept the Voyager probes, Sagan wanted them to encounter us at our best. Not through radio waves or radar echoes, but through something deeply human: music, art, greetings, and the gentle sounds of our world. The golden records contain 115 images, DNA structures, mathematical definitions, a diagram of our solar system, animals, landscapes, and a mother nursing her child. There are recordings of wind, waves, thunder, a heartbeat, and the brainwaves of an Agruyan. Sagan's partner captured while she was thinking about love. There is music from all over the world: Bach, Beethoven, Blind Willie Johnson, Javanese, gamelan, and traditional songs from China, Peru, and Senegal. There are greetings in 55 languages, including an English message that simply says, "Hello from the children of planet Earth." Hope in a disc of gold. The records themselves are made of gold-plated copper, designed to endure for 1 billion years, encased in protective aluminum, with a stylus and instructions engraved for playback. They are built like sacred artifacts, not just of culture, but of optimism. Sagan knew the odds were long. The Voyagers may never be found. The records may drift endlessly in the dark. But that wasn't the point. The point was that we tried. That in the midst of Cold War tensions, pollution, poverty, and violence, we still paused to make something beautiful. Something meant for someone else. Someone who might never come. It was an act of radical generosity, of deep time thinking, of planetary humility. It was, in Sagan's view, one of the most hopeful things humanity had ever done. A message not just for aliens as much as the golden records were meant for extraterrestrial beings. They were also meant for us. A mirror held up to our species. By curating what we would say to the cosmos, we were also deciding what mattered most, what endures, what defines us beyond borders, religions, or eras. Sagan saw the project as a form of planetary self-reflection. He believed that even if the message was never received, it was worth creating, because it allowed us to see Earth as one home, humanity as one voice. This shift in perspective was at the heart of his mission. Again and again, in lectures, books, and broadcasts. He returned to the theme. We are one species on one fragile world, adrift in a vast ocean of stars. The Voyager records were not just communication, they were communion, the interstellar perspective view. Projects in history have forced humanity to think on such immense timescales. The golden records might travel for billions of years, outlasting all languages, cities, mountains, and perhaps even the Earth itself. Sagan found comfort in this. He spoke of the records as messages in bottles cast into a cosmic ocean. The fact that they would endure that somewhere far beyond the reach of sunlight, something human would remain, was deeply moving to him. And yet, he never lost sight of the irony. Here we were, sending greetings to other worlds while struggling to care for our own. He often reflected on how the records speak more truthfully than we realize, not just through what they include, but through what they leave out: the suffering, the wars, the injustice. Still, he believed that the best of you, as the part capable of music, love, and science, deserved to be remembered, even if the stars never answered. A love letter to the cosmos for Sagan. The golden records were more than just science. They were poetry. They were an expression of human longing, the longing to reach out, to be heard, to be known. He wrote, "The spacecraft will be encountered, and the record played only if there are advanced spacefaring civilizations in interstellar space." But the launching of this bottle into the cosmic ocean says something very hopeful about life on this planet. It was, he said, the equivalent of a tree carving left behind by a traveler who may never return, saying, "I was here. I mattered. This is what I loved." A message for you tonight as you rest now. Under your own piece of the cosmic sky, imagine Voyager sailing silently between the stars. No engine, no lights, just momentum and time. Inside, a record. Inside that, a song, a heartbeat, a child's greeting, a wave breaking on a beach. And behind it, all the gentle voice of Carl Sagan, guiding our message, reminding us that even in darkness, we can choose to speak with kindness, with wonder, and with hope. The golden record may never be found. Or maybe one day, far from now, in a distant system, a curious being will lift the stylus and place it down. And from the quiet gold disc, a voice will say, "Hello, this is who we were." And maybe that will be enough. Chapter 17. The Cosmic Calendar. A year of everything. Imagine compressing the entire history of the universe, 13.8 billion years, into a single year. From the birth of time itself to the rise of human civilization, all of it unfolded within this cosmic year. This is Carl Sagan's cosmic calendar. one of his most powerful tools for visualizing the immensity of time and our place within it. In this grand metaphor, the Big Bang occurs on January 1st at midnight, and the present moment is the final tick of December 31st at 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds p.m. Every cosmic milestone, the formation of galaxies, the emergence of life, the invention of languages placed along this compressed scale. The result is nothing short of humbling and awe-inspiring. January, the birth of the universe, the stroke of midnight on January 1st, the universe is born. In a moment of unimaginable heat and density, space and time themselves spring into being. Expansion begins faster than the speed of light. Energy cools, matter forms. The laws of physics, constant and elegant, begin their eternal dance. By the end of January, the first galaxies begin to take shape. Countless islands of stars swirling in the newborn darkness. Somewhere in one of them, a small, unremarkable spiral galaxy hour, Milky Way, begins to form. Millions of years pass. In our calendar, they are still only February, March, and April. The cosmic clock ticks slowly. Stars are born and die, seeding space with heavier elements: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen. The ingredients for life are being forged in stellar furnaces. September, the sun and earth arrive. It isn't until September 1st that our sun ignites in this scale. Over 2/3 of the year has already passed. A few days later, the earth condenses. From a swirling disk of dust and rock, it is violent, molten, bombarded by debris, but gradually it cools. Oceans form, atmosphere thickens. Then something extraordinary happens. Somewhere in these waters, September 21st, give or take a few days, life begins. We don't know exactly how. Perhaps through lightning striking a chemical soup. Perhaps deep in hydrothermal vents. But from that first spark, everything begins to change. Single-celled organisms dominate for months of the calendar. Evolution is slow, deliberate. Photosynthesis begins. Oxygen builds up. Complex cells emerge. It is now November, December. Multicellular life, dinosaurs and mammals. It is only in early December that multicellular organisms bloom into complex life. The oceans fill with creatures that swim, crawl, and hunt. Plants appear on land. Insects follow. Forests rise. And then, around December 25th, dinosaurs thunder across the earth for 5 cosmic days. They reign. Then, on December 30th, a massive asteroid ends their dominion. The skies darken. Ecosystems collapse. But mammals, small and hidden, survive. They begin to rise. On December 31st, At 10:30 p.m., our earliest hominid ancestors appear. Apes, walking upright, using tools, sharing fire. The final minutes, civilization and consciousness of recorded human history, of we know, of kings, wars, inventions, literature, and religion folds in the final seconds of December 3-1, Saint, to be precise, the first cave. Paintings appear around 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 30 seconds p.m. Agriculture is discovered at 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 35 seconds p.m. The first cities form at 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 50 seconds p.m. The Great Pyramids are built at 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 52 seconds p.m. The Roman Empire rises and falls between 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 54 seconds, and 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 56 seconds p.m. The Industrial Revolution begins at 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds p.m. The first moon landing happens within the last fraction of a second. Everything your birth, your memories, your entire life exists in a blink, a breath, a shimmer on the surface of a cosmic ocean. A humbling perspective. Sagan created the cosmic calendar, not to diminish us, but to awaken us. He wanted us to feel the scale of time, not just know it intellectually. To understand that we are newcomers, recent arrivals in a universe that has been unfolding for eons, and yet, here we are. Despite our youth, we are capable of great insight. We can look back and piece together this calendar. We can reconstruct the birth of stars, the arc of evolution, the shifting of continents. We are children of time, but aware children. And that awareness, Sagan believed, was a kind of miracle, responsibility in the final seconds, to live in the last moments of the cosmic calendar is not a curse, it's a gift, a chance to witness, to learn, and to protect. Sagan reminded us that even though our species is young, our actions now will shape what follows. If we survive, then, if we thrive, then, future beings may look back at this final second as the dawn of wisdom. But we must earn that future in just seconds. We have reshaped the planet. In fractions of a second, we've developed nuclear weapons, space flight, global communication. The pace is breathtaking and dangerous. Sagan believed we had only just begun to understand ourselves, and that understanding must come quickly if we are to endure. A calendar written in stars. You rest tonight. Imagine the months of that cosmic year stretched across the sky. January's galaxies spinning, April stars igniting, September's earth forming, December's forests, oceans, and living songs. And now, in this final second, you lying under this sky, reflecting on it all. You are not separate from the story. You are the story, remembering itself. Carl Sagan wanted us to see that truth, not to feel small, but to feel connected. To see that we are woven into the fabric of time, light, matter, and mystery. The cosmic calendar is not just a model. It is an invitation to marvel, to act, to cherish our fleeting moment. Because even in the blink of an eye, a world can change. Chapter 18, A Universe Not Made for Us, Sagan's reflections on human significance in the face of the vast and ancient cosmos. It's only natural to ask, what does it all mean? Are we the center of something greater, or simply passing shadows in a cold and indifferent universe? Carl Sagan confronted this question often. His answer was neither cynical nor sentimental, was rooted in clarity. He acknowledged a truth that many resisted. The universe was not made for us. And yet, he believed that very truth makes our existence even more precious. To understand this perspective, we must first let go of old assumptions, those comforting stories that placed humanity at the center of all things, chosen and favored. Sagan asked us to set aside myth, and in doing so, offered something even more profound, a sense of meaning not bestowed upon us, but discovered by us, displacing the center for much of human history. We believed Earth was the center of the universe. The sun, moon, planets, and stars all revolved around us. It was a reassuring visionocosmic home built just for humankind. Then came Copernicus and Galileo and Newton, and finally the telescope. With each step, we were displaced. Earth was not the center of the solar system. The sun was not the center of the galaxy. Our galaxy was not the center of the universe. Carl Sagan embraced these humbling revelations. He saw them not as losses, but as openings, portals to a deeper understanding of our place in reality. We were not central, not designed, and yet here we were capable of understanding that truth. Significance without specialness, Sagan often said. We live on a hunk of rock and metal that circles a humdrum star in the outer suburbs of an ordinary galaxy. To some, that sounds bleak, but for Sagan, it was exhilarating. He believed that significance does not require centrality. We do not need to be the center of the universe to matter. We only need to be aware, he wrote. Who are we? We find that we live on an insignificant planet of a humdrum star, lost in a galaxy, tucked away in some forgotten corner of a universe in which there are far more galaxies than people. And yet, it is we who ask these questions. We who launch spacecraft, write poetry, map the stars. This, for Sagan, was the true miracle, not that the universe was made for us, but that we could come to understand the universe at all. The indifference of the cosmos. Sagan didn't sugarcoat the truth. The universe, he admitted, is vast, cold, and unfeeling. It does not know us. It does not comfort us. It does not protect us. Stars explode. Galaxies collide. Black holes devour light. Planets are destroyed without intention, without malice, without mercy. But Sagan believed this indifference made compassion all the more important in a universe that offers no guarantees, no safety nets. No grand planet is up to us to create meaning, to care for one another, to build peace, to tell stories, to listen. He wrote, "If the universe does not care about us, and if we have no destiny, then we are all the more precious. We are the custodians of life's meaning." The power of consciousness, though he denied that the universe was made for us. Sagan marveled at one undeniable fact. It produced us, somehow, through 13.8 billion years of evolution. Matter arranged itself into minds capable of questioning their own origins. "We are a way," he wrote, "for the cosmos to know itself." It was not theology, but observation. Carbon atoms, forged in ancient stars, eventually formed into neurons. Those neurons formed thoughts. Those thoughts built civilizations. We are, quite literally, the product of the stars, and yet we are able to study them, to reflect on them, to feel wonder beneath them. In a way, the universe gave birth to its own awareness, and we temporary, vulnerable, imperfecter, the bearers of that flame. Humility, as a virtue. Sagan's vision required humility. Not the false humility of self-denial, but the real humility of scale. He believed arrogance was dangerous, especially in an age of global threats. To believe the earth was made for us is to risk abusing it. To imagine we are favored is to justify cruelty. But to know we are one among many, that fosters empathy, responsibility, humility, Sagan taught, is not weakness. It is wisdom. It reminds us that we are not the masters of the universe, but its students, meaning in the here and now. If the universe does not offer us meaning from above, where do we find it? Sagan pointed to the here and now, to the bonds between people, the beauty of nature, the search for knowledge. He believed that love, art, science, and laughter were not small things. They were everything. He saw life not as a dress rehearsal for something greater, but as the main event. And in that fleeting span between birth and death, we are given the chance to be kind, to learn, to connect, to wonder. What greater purpose could we ask for? A night in the vastnesses, you lie here now, drifting into sleep. Consider the immensity of space. The stars above you are light years away, some no longer even exist, and yet their light still touches you. You are, for this brief moment, aware of the vastness, aware of yourself within it. This awareness is not insignificant, it is rare, precious, possibly unique in all the cold reaches of the cosmos. There may be no cathedral greater than your own mind, no symphony more complex than your thoughts, no miracle more improbable than the fact that you are here, now, breathing beneath ancient starlight. Carl Sagan never asked us to believe in magic, only to believe in truth and to find within it a new kind of sacred. The universe may not be made for us, but we are here, and that is enough. Chapter 19. The Demon-Haunted World. Sagan's defense of reason. There is a darkness that does not come from the absence of stars. It comes from within, when fear replaces understanding, when myths obscure facts, when ignorance dresses itself in confidence. Carl Sagan called this shadow the demon-haunted world in 1995, just a year before his death. Sagan published The Demon-Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Dark, a passionate defense of reason in an age of rising pseudoscience, conspiracy theories, and magical thinking. It was more than a book, was a warning, and, like many of his messages, it echoes even more powerfully today. A candle against the dark. The title itself evokes an ancient image, a small, flickering flame held up in an overwhelming darkness. That flame, for Sagan, was science, not just a body of knowledge, but a method of inquiry, a way of asking questions and testing answers. It is not perfect. It makes mistakes. But unlike superstition or dogma, science contains the tools to correct itself. It is self-aware. It knows it can be wrong, and that makes it stronger, not weaker. Sagan wrote, "Science is more than a body of knowledge. It is a way of thinking, a way of skeptically interrogating the universe with a fine understanding of human fallibility." In a world filled with dazzling illusions and seductive falsehoods, skepticism is not cynicism, is compassion for truth. The temptation of easy answers. Sagan understood the deep human desire for comfort. We want answers even when they don't exist. We want to believe in ghosts, in aliens visiting crop fields, in magical cures, in ancient prophecies. These beliefs, he argued, often come from fear. Fear of death, fear of the unknown, fear of being powerless. And where fear grows, charlatans appear. People who sell certainty at the cost of truth. They may not mean harm, but their consequences can be devastating. Pseudoscience can delay medical treatment. Superstition can fuel hatred. Misinformation can poison entire cultures. Sagan didn't judge belief harshly. He empathized with it. But he urged us not to settle for stories when evidence is available. The baloney detection, Keaton, the demon-haunted world. Sagan famously introduced his baloney detection kit, a set of tools for critical thinking. It includes basic principles, such as independent confirmation of facts debate from all points of view, no appeal to authority alone, matching claims to available evidence, considering multiple hypotheses, avoiding logical fallacies. May sound simple, but these tools can protect us not just from external lies, but from our own biases. We are all prone to wishful thinking, to selective memory, to cognitive shortcuts. The scientific method is not just about laboratories, it is about learning how to be less wrong. Science, as empowerment. Sagan believed that science was not just for scientists. It belonged to everyone. It was a birthright. He dreamed of a society where citizens were not just consumers of technology, but thinkers, able to engage with the complex world around them. A society that values reason is less likely to fall prey to authoritarianism, propaganda, and fear-based manipulation. It becomes harder to control a population that knows how to ask, "Where's the evidence?" Sagan wrote, "In science, it often happens that scientists say, 'You know, that's a really good argument. My position is mistaken,' and then they actually change their minds." He admired this rare quality, this intellectual humility, and he believed it was essential to democracy. The dangers of a science-less society, Sagan warned, that we were slipping into a time when people relied more on feelings than facts, a time when entertainment blurred with education, when public discourse grew shallow, when the tools of reason were neglected. He feared a world where people were technologically advanced, but scientifically illiterate, a dangerous combination. He wrote, "We live in a society exquisitely dependent on science and technology, in which hardly anyone knows anything about science and technology. That gap," he believed, "must be closed not by forcing science onto people, but by rekindling their curiosity, the romance of reality, to those who accuse science of being cold or soulless." Sagan offered a gentle rebuttal. The universe is not only stranger than we imagine. It is stranger than we can imagine. What could be more poetic than understanding how stars die to give birth to atoms in your body? What could be more spiritual than knowing your brain contains more connections than there are stars in the galaxy? Science, at its best, does not strip away wonder, it expands it. It replaces superstition, not with emptiness, but with something richer, a deep connection to the universe, grounded in truth. Lit by curiosity, a gentle plea for the future. As the book closes, Sagan's tone softens. He is no longer just the scientist. He is the father, the teacher, the concerned citizen. He doesn't preach. He invites. He urges us to build a world where knowledge is cherished, where children grow up asking questions and are encouraged to find real answers, where truth is not feared but welcomed. He knew the future was uncertain, but he believed in our capacity to learn, to adapt, to care. A quiet vigil in the night as you lay quietly now. Listening in the stillness of this moment, remember that the same flame Sagan spoke of still burns in classrooms, in observatories, in minds that refuse to settle for easy answers. You, too, carry that light. Every time you question, every time you wonder, every time you seek understanding, no matter how small the question may seem, Carl Sagan's candle in the dark was not a final answer, was an invitation to keep walking carefully with open eyes in a world haunted by ancient fears and modern confusion. Reason is not an enemy of mystery, it is its guardian dot. Sleep now with the comfort that truth still matters, and with the quiet courage to seek it, one question at a time. Chapter 20. Sagan's Legacy, the Eternal Flame of Curiosity. In the quiet corners of libraries, in the soft hum of observatories, in the gentle voices of teachers kindling wonder in young minds, Carl Sagan still lives, not as a myth, not as a saint, but as something more enduring, a torchbearer of curiosity. Long after his voice faded from our radios and his footsteps left no mark on the moon he dreamed of exploring, his ideas continue to ripple outward like waves on the surface of a cosmic sea. This is his true legacy. Not merely the books, the television series, or the lectures, but the spark he left behind in those willing to ask why, and perhaps more importantly, those willing to ask what if. A scientist of the people, Carl Sagan was a brilliant astronomer. He studied planetary atmospheres, helped design missions to Venus and Mars, worked on the Voyager probes, and contributed to our understanding of life's potential beyond Earth. But what made him unforgettable was not just what he knew, it was how he shared it. He never spoke down to people. He spoke across, from scientist to citizen, from stargazer to stargazer. He believed that science belongs to everyone, that the mysteries of the universe should not be hidden in academic halls, but whispered into the ears of anyone willing to listen. In Cosmos, he wrote, "We are all made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself." This wasn't just poetry. It was a gentle hand on the shoulder, reminding us that even in our smallest moments, we are part of something vast and ancient and miraculous, seeds planted in time when Sagan spoke of the stars. He wasn't just speaking about fusion or orbits. He was speaking of possibility, of what we might become if we choose knowledge over ignorance, empathy over fear. He once said, "Somewhere, something incredible is waiting to be known. And that sentence, simple as it seems, has stirred generations into action. It has launched careers, sparked dreams, lit up classrooms and quiet bedrooms where curious children looked up at the ceiling and wondered what lay beyond. Sagan taught us that science isn't a cold collection of facts. It is a human endeavor. It is full of mistakes and revisions, failures and triumphs. But it is always moving forward, pulled by the gravity of our questions, the fragility of the pale blue. Perhaps Sagan's most enduring message came not from a telescope, but from a photograph in 1990. Voyager, one then almost 4 billion miles from Earth, turned its camera back and took a final image of our home. A tiny speck, suspended in a sunbeam. That image became known as the pale blue dot, and Sagan's reflection on it became a quiet anthem of perspective. He wrote, "That's here. That's home. That's us. All our wars, all our joys, all our dreams contained in a single pixel, smaller than a grain of sand." He reminded us that in that pale dot, we must learn to live with kindness, because there is no sign of help coming from elsewhere, no rescue, no escape, only us together. Lessons. That echo on Carl Sagan taught many things. Among them, that skepticism is not cynicism, but the foundation of wisdom. That humility is not defeat, but the beginning of understanding. That science and wonder can walk hand in hand, each deepening the other. That we are not the masters of the universe, but its students and, sometimes, its storytellers. And most of all, he taught that knowledge is not the enemy of mystery. On the contrary, the more we learn, the more mysterious and beautiful the cosmos becomes. Carrying the flame forward, Sagan is gone now. His voice, once soft and deliberate, no longer echoes in new interviews. But the questions he loved are still with us. Is there life on other worlds? Can we build a peaceful, spacefaring civilization? How do we protect this tiny blue world? The answers will not come from one person. They will come from all of us. From new scientists, new thinkers, new dreamers, many of whom first looked through Sagan's eyes. He did not want followers. He wanted questioners, explorers, people who would carry the flame, not in imitation, but in discovery. That is the true measure of a legacy, not in how loudly it proclaims itself, but in how quietly it empowers others, a soft voice in the night to night. As you drift into rest, think of Carl Sagan not as a hero etched in marble, but as a traveler in time, one who paused for a while, looked around and said, "Come, see what I've found." He showed us Saturn's rings, Jupiter's storms, Venus's furnace, and the whispers of molecules in distant clouds. But more than that, he showed us ourselves fragile, curious, filled with contradictions and potential. He believed in us, not in who we are now, but in who we might become. So sleep now, with your own quiet questions cradled beside you. Let wonder be your companion. Let doubt be your teacher. Let imagination lead you gently through the dark. And remember, above all, the universe is vast. The night is long. But we are awake and we are learning. Thanks, in no small part, to the man who taught us how to listen to the stars.